At my wedding, my best friend announced she was pregnant with my fiancé's baby. Their eyes were gleaming, but I just smiled, gripping my phone like it was a loaded gun. One tap, and their lies came crashing down, exposing the truth I'd been hiding in the shadows. My revenge was ice cold, and they'll never forget that day. I stood in the middle of the wedding hall at the Golden Rose restaurant in Chicago, surrounded by the glow of crystal chandeliers, casting a chilly light on my pristine white dress. 200 pairs of eyes were glued to me, waiting for me to fall apart. My best friend Kate had just raised her glass, her voice dripping with fake tears, trembling as she announced she was pregnant with my fiancé, Michael's child. Her eyes sparkled with triumph, his with a tense confidence, like he could already see me crumbling into despair. My chest tightened, but I forced a smile, feeling the champagne burn my throat like an icy blade. My hand slid to my phone, fingers shaking with barely contained rage. One press of a button and their world collapsed. I had an ace up my sleeve, pieced together over weeks of sleepless nights, fueled by pain and betrayal. I was about to play it in a way that would make them remember this day forever. Revenge, I learned, tastes best when served with a smile as cold as a Chicago winter and sharp as shattered glass. My dress, white with a long flowing train, cascaded across the marble floor like a silk river, clinging to my trembling legs. I, Anna Wilson, a 30-year-old marketer with ambitions that once felt like a bridge to the future, stood at the head of the wedding table, my heart pounding under a tight corset, like it was trying to break free from my chest. This was supposed to be my day, the day I'd say, "I do," to Michael Davis, the man who walked into my life 3 years ago with a smile that made my heart skip a beat. The Golden Rose restaurant in downtown Chicago was decked out with roses and lilies, their sweet scent mixing with the aroma of expensive champagne, creating the illusion of a fairy tale. The chandeliers cast a soft glow, and the glasses sparkled like stars I once dreamed of reaching for with Michael by my side. Michael sat next to me, his hand resting on mine, warm but with a strange heaviness that sent a chill down my spine. His dark hair was perfectly styled, a light stubble highlighting his rugged charm, but his eyes, ones I used to think were windows to his soul, felt like dark wells hiding lies today. I chalked it up to nerves, wedding jitters, 200 guests, the pressure. But deep down, in a corner of my mind, I tried to ignore. Doubt was already sprouting like a poisonous weed. Kate, my college friend, sat 2 seats away. Her blonde hair curled perfectly, her bridesmaid dress tailored to hug her figure like she was trying to outshine me. She fidgeted with her napkin, avoiding my gaze, her fingers trembling with tension. That was the first red flag, but I was too caught up in the illusion of happiness to notice. My mom, Linda, sat next to her, her face glowing with pride, but her eyes kept darting to Kate like they shared a secret that was burning them from the inside. I noticed it, and my heart clenched, but I brushed it off, thinking it was just her usual need to control everything. Michael's toast was short but warm, his voice carrying through the room like smooth velvet, and the guests clapped. I felt a flicker of warmth in my chest, but it vanished when Kate stood up. Her glass shook in her hand, her face a mask of fake tears and determination. She announced she was pregnant, and that Michael was the father. My world froze. I felt his hand tighten on mine, not in comfort, but in anticipation, like he was waiting for me to shatter like a porcelain doll. The guests exchanged glances, the waiters froze against the walls, and my mom looked down, her fingers clenching into fists, betraying her guilt. I took a slow sip of champagne, the cold burning my throat, and looked at Kate. Her eyes gleamed with triumph, but I saw fear in them. Fear that I might know more than she thought. They all expected me to break. But I was ready. My voice didn't waver when I responded. I said it was very interesting and smiled, though inside I was boiling, like lava ready to erupt. My chest burned with pain, but I forced myself to stand tall, like an invisible armor shielded me from their stares. My mom tried to step in, her tone full of judgment, as always when she thought I might ruin the moment. She was terrified of a scene, terrified I'd wreck the perfect family image she'd spent years building at the cost of my feelings. But I wasn't about to throw a tantrum. Instead, I reached for my clutch, my fingers trembling with suppressed rage, and pulled out my phone. I turned on the projector I'd arranged to have set up, feeling my heart pound in rhythm with my steps toward revenge. The screen behind me lit up, displaying a text conversation I'd found 2 weeks earlier when I grabbed Michael's phone to order food. A message from Kate. "She'll never find out if we're careful." Michael's reply. "Just make sure she doesn't check my laptop." I stared at the screen, feeling my heart squeeze like it was caught in a steel vise. But my smile stayed unshakable. A mask I'd learned to wear over those weeks. The guests gasped. Someone dropped a fork, and the clatter echoed through the room like a funeral bell for their lies. Kate paled, her glass nearly slipping from her hand, her eyes, triumphant just a minute ago, now filled with panic. Michael's jaw clenched so hard I could see his cheekbones tighten, and his hand, still on mine, turned cold as ice. I switched to the next slide, and my heart jumped with grim satisfaction. Photos appeared. Kate kissing another man in a cafe on the outskirts of Chicago. I recognized him, Jake, her ex-boyfriend, who she claimed she'd broken up with a year ago. I explained how I'd hired a private investigator to confirm my suspicions, each word like a lash of a whip. The photos were taken 3 weeks ago, when Kate claimed she was at soul yoga. I watched her face shift from shock to horror as she realized her mask had been ripped off. My mom jumped up, her face red with anger, her voice trembling as she accused me of cruelty, of ruining the day. But I didn't stop. The next slide was my trump card. A medical report obtained through a contact at the clinic where Kate supposedly had her checkup. She wasn't pregnant. It was a lie, carefully planned to ruin my wedding and my life. I looked at her as her eyes filled with tears, but there was no remorse in them, just fear of being caught. Kate lunged for the remote, her nails digging into my palm, leaving burning scratches. But I stepped back, staying calm even though a storm raged inside me. I switched to another slide, showing bank statements. I explained how Michael had been siphoning money from his company's corporate account to Kate's, disguising it as business trips. The amounts were staggering, tens of thousands of dollars he stole to fund their secret meetups and her new life. I'd sent those records to his bosses the day before the wedding, and now he faced an investigation. The guests started whispering, their voices blending into a hum like a swarm of bees. My Aunt Mary, always a fan of drama, pulled out her phone and started recording, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I showed my final piece of evidence, a video from the investigator. In it, Kate and Jake discussed how she'd use a fake pregnancy to ruin my wedding and get Michael's money. Her voice on the recording was cold, calculated. Anna's too naive to suspect anything. I watched her face collapse as she realized her game was over. My voice shook with barely contained rage, but I held it together because I knew this was my moment. It all started a month ago in the apartment I shared with Michael in Lincoln Park. I was on the couch, scrolling through his phone to pick a restaurant for dinner. We were planning a cozy night, and I was happy, thinking we were on the verge of a new life. Then a message from Kate popped up. She'll never find out. Those words sliced into my brain like a knife, and I felt my heart drop into a bottomless pit. I didn't believe it at first, chalking it up to a misunderstanding. But my hands shook as I opened their conversation. Each word was like a punch, tearing apart my idea of our love. I sat in the dark, feeling tears burn my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Instead, I started digging. That night, while Michael slept, I checked his laptop. He never used strong passwords, banking on my trust, and that was his first mistake. In his cloud storage, I found a folder with their messages, each one like poison seeping into my memories. They discussed everything: how to fool me, how Kate would fake a pregnancy, how they'd split the bonus I got from a successful marketing campaign. But the most shocking part was something else. I found proof that Michael was fudging financial reports at his company to cover their expenses with Kate. He was transferring money to her account, disguising it as corporate expenses, and every number in those statements was like a knife to my heart. I didn't sleep that night. My eyes burned with tears I refused to shed, and my chest ached with the pain of betrayal. I remembered how Michael looked at me when I shared my dreams, how he hugged me, promising to be there forever. It was all a lie. I reached out to Emily, my friend from law school, who now worked at a big firm in downtown Chicago. We met at a cafe the next day, far from prying eyes. I showed her screenshots of the messages, and her face turned serious, like she was reading a death sentence. She suggested hiring a private investigator to gather evidence to protect myself. I nodded, feeling a cold resolve take root inside me. The investigator I hired was a pro. Within a week, he put together a dossier on Kate. Photos of her meetings with Jake at cafes, motels, even his place. I sat in my room, flipping through those pictures, and felt my heart tear apart. Kate, my friend who I shared secrets with in college, who cried on my shoulder when Jake dumped her, was now using him to ruin my life. But there was another twist I uncovered the day before the wedding. My mom knew. I found her texts with Kate on an old phone she'd left at our place. They discussed how to save me from Michael, how Kate should open my eyes. My mom hated Michael for his ambition, for supposedly holding me back. She thought I deserved someone better, but instead of talking to me, she chose betrayal. I sat in my room, holding that phone, feeling my heart shatter. My own mother, the woman who was supposed to be my rock, was in on it. I remembered how she always compared me to Kate, praising her softness and femininity that she thought I lacked. Every memory was like a knife, cutting deeper. But that wasn't all. I discovered my mom had been secretly sending Kate money from her savings to support her. The transfers were disguised as charity, but I found statements proving otherwise. It was another blow, and I felt rage boiling inside me. I wasn't their victim. I was a woman about to destroy them. A week before the wedding, I crafted a plan, each detail like a brick in the wall I was building around their lies. I wasn't going to be a sobbing victim. I wanted them to feel the same pain they'd caused me. I contacted the clinic where Kate supposedly had her checkup. Through a doctor friend, I got access to her medical records, and when I read she wasn't pregnant, my heart clenched with a mix of relief and fury. It was a lie she'd concocted to ruin my life, and I was going to use that truth as a weapon. I also sent proof of Michael's financial schemes to his bosses, anonymously through encrypted email. I knew the investigation would start right after the wedding, a ticking time bomb. But I wanted more. I wanted them to destroy themselves. I arranged with a tech at the restaurant to set up a projector linked to my phone. I loaded all the evidence into a presentation, texts, photos, videos, bank statements. I rehearsed my speech in front of the mirror, sharpening every word to cut like a razor. I pictured their faces, their shock, their despair, and it gave me strength. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to win. On the wedding day, I was calmer than ever, though a storm raged inside me. I looked at Michael as he adjusted his tuxedo, wondering how he'd look when his world fell apart. His confident smile now seemed like a mask hiding a coward. I hugged Kate when she came to the dressing room, smiling as she flinched at my touch. Her eyes were full of fear, and I knew she sensed my strength. My mom tried to talk about our family's future, but her hands shook, betraying her guilt. They all thought I was clueless. That was my greatest weapon. At the wedding, after Kate's announcement, I stood up, holding my phone like a grenade, ready to explode. My chest burned with pain, but I forced a smile, feeling every guest's eyes on me, waiting for me to collapse. I turned on the projector, and the room filled with whispers as the texts appeared on the screen. I laid it all out. How I found the messages, hired a detective, uncovered Kate's lies, and Michael's schemes. I showed the photos of her with Jake, the medical report, the bank statements. Every word was a blow, and I watched their faces change. Kate's from triumph to panic, Michael's from confidence to despair, my mom's from judgment to shock. My soul sang with grim satisfaction, but I kept my composure, not letting my emotions take over. Aunt Mary recorded everything, her eyes gleaming like she was watching a blockbuster tragedy. Kate lunged for the remote, her nails digging into my palm, leaving burning scratches, and I felt rage flare up like a wildfire. But I stepped back, staying calm despite the storm inside me. I played the video of Kate and Jake plotting her fake pregnancy. Her voice on the recording was cold, calculated, and every guest heard her call me naive. I watched her face crumble as she realized her game was over. I announced there'd be no wedding. I slipped off my ring, tossed it onto the table, and it clinked like a bell, signaling the end of their charade. My hand shook, but I held my head high. I turned to my mom, who sat with her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with shame. I told her I knew about her role in the plan and that she was no longer part of my life. The guests whispered, some cried, others filmed. Michael tried to leave, but I stopped him with a look. "Your company already knows," I said, and his face turned gray as ash. I walked out of the hall, feeling their stares burn into my back. Behind me, Kate was sobbing. Michael was stammering excuses, and Mary kept filming. I got into a cab, and the driver, noticing my dress, asked why I was alone. I smiled, feeling tears well up, but said I was starting a new life. I rode in the cab, watching Chicago's lights, feeling the adrenaline drain from my body, leaving an empty void. Memories swirled in my head. Meeting Michael at a coffee shop 3 years ago. His smile that made my heart skip. Kate becoming my friend in college, laughing until we cried, sharing dreams. My mom always comparing me to others, saying I was too independent. It was all a lie. fragile as glass I'd just shattered. My chest ached, but I didn't let myself cry. I was stronger than all of them. Emily was waiting at her apartment with a bottle of wine. She didn't ask questions, just hugged me, and I felt her warmth crack through my armor. I told her everything, showing her the evidence I'd gathered. My hands shook as I flipped through the photos, texts, and videos. Emily was shocked, but her eyes burned with determination. She suggested I contact a lawyer to protect myself from any fallout, and I nodded, feeling a spark of hope. This wasn't the end, it was a beginning. The next day, I learned Michael had been fired. His company launched an internal investigation, and rumors of his schemes spread through the city like wildfire. Kate deleted her social media after Mary's video went viral, racking up 1 million views overnight. She became a laughingstock, dubbed the Queen of Deception, and I couldn't help but smile reading the comments. But my heart still ached, because Kate's betrayal wasn't just a lie. It was a knife, plunged deep into my soul. A week after the wedding, I got an email from Jake. He wrote that Kate had tried to blackmail him, threatening to tell his wife about their affair. My fingers gripped my phone as I read his words, and I felt rage flare up again. He offered to meet to discuss holding Kate accountable, and I agreed, sensing this story wasn't over. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of Chicago, where none of my acquaintances would show up. Jake looked exhausted, his eyes red from lack of sleep, his hands trembling as he held his coffee. He explained that Kate had rekindled their relationship 6 months ago, promising it was no strings attached. But then she started demanding money, threatening to ruin his marriage. My lips pressed into a thin line as I listened, feeling the pain of betrayal mix with grim satisfaction. Kate hadn't just betrayed me, she'd used everyone around her like pawns in her game. I showed him the evidence, texts, photos, videos. His face paled when he saw pictures of him and Kate kissing at a motel. He was stunned, but agreed to help. We decided to hand the evidence to his lawyer, who was already preparing a lawsuit against Kate for blackmail and defamation. I also learned Kate had tried to contact Michael, but he'd blocked her, afraid she'd drag him down with her. It was almost funny. They'd both betrayed me, and now they were betraying each other. My soul sang at the thought, but the pain still throbbed in my chest like an open wound. That same day, I got a call from my mom. She begged to meet, her voice trembling, but I heard no remorse in it. Just fear for her reputation. My fingers gripped the phone so hard, my knuckles turned white. I refused, saying she'd made her choice. I blocked her number, and the tears I'd held back for so long finally spilled over. My own mother, who was supposed to be my rock, chose Kate. Now she'd have to live with that. But there was another twist. The investigator told me Kate didn't just lie about the pregnancy. She'd tried to forge medical records to convince Michael. She'd paid a nurse at the clinic to create a fake report. I sat in my room, staring at that report, feeling rage give way to cold determination. I passed the information to Jake's lawyer, who added it to the lawsuit. Kate wasn't just losing her reputation, she was facing criminal charges, and I wanted her to know what it felt like to be cornered. A few days after meeting Jake, I got a message from Aunt Mary with a link to a local newspaper article. The headline read, "Financial Scandal at Chicago Firm. Vice President under investigation." My heart leapt as I read that Michael wasn't just fired. He was facing criminal charges. His schemes were bigger than I thought. He wasn't only funneling money to Kate, but also fudging reports to cover company losses. The article mentioned an anonymous source who provided the evidence, and I knew that was me. I sat on my couch, my heart pounding with grim triumph, but the pain of betrayal still burned inside me. Mary also told me my mom had tried to defend Kate, claiming I'd exaggerated her role. She even hosted a dinner at her country club to clear Kate's name. But no one showed up. Kate became a pariah. Her former friends turned their backs, and the brands she worked with as an influencer dropped her contracts. I pictured her sitting alone, her perfect curls now disheveled, her eyes full of the tears she loved to weaponize. But I didn't feel joy, just exhaustion and the emptiness left by their betrayal. Then came another shock. Mary sent me an old letter she'd found among my mom's things. It was a note from Kate, written 2 years ago, when I first started dating Michael. In it, Kate wrote that I was too focused on my career to be a good wife, and that Michael deserved better. My hands shook as I read those words, and tears burned my eyes. They'd been planning this from the start, and I was just a pawn in their game. That truth was like a knife to my heart, but it also gave me the strength to move forward. A week after the wedding, I got an unexpected call from Michael's old friend Tom, who worked at his company. He asked to meet, saying he had information that might interest me. My nerves were on edge, but I agreed, sensing this could open a new chapter in the story. We met at a small bar in downtown Chicago, and Tom looked nervous, his fingers fidgeting with the edge of his whiskey glass. He revealed that Michael wasn't just stealing from the company, he was using the money to fund a secret project with Kate. They planned to start their own business, using my money and connections to launch it. Tom had found documents hidden in Michael's office and handed them to me. They were drafts of a business plan listing Kate as a partner and me as an unsuspecting investor. My chest tightened with rage as I flipped through the pages. They hadn't just betrayed me, they wanted to use me like a puppet to build their dream on my ruins. But there was more. Tom said Michael had tried to frame him to cover his tracks, forging Tom's signature on documents to shift the blame if the schemes were exposed. Tom was furious but too scared to speak up until he saw the wedding video. He gave me copies of the documents and I felt a new wave of resolve. I passed them to my lawyer, Richard, who said they could be the final nail in Michael's coffin. I left the bar, the cold Chicago wind stinging my face. My thoughts swirled like a storm. Michael and Kate hadn't just ruined my life. They'd tried to ruin everyone in their path. But I was ready. I wasn't stopping until their lies were fully exposed. A month later, I arranged to meet Michael. He'd asked for it, saying he wanted to explain. I agreed, but on my terms, in my lawyer Richard's office in downtown Chicago. Michael walked in, and I barely recognized him. His tuxedo was gone, replaced by a crumpled blazer, dark circles under his eyes, his confident smile replaced by desperation. He looked broken, and for a moment my heart softened with pity, but I pushed it away. He didn't deserve my compassion. He tried to justify himself, claiming Kate manipulated him, that he didn't want to hurt me. His voice was weak, almost pleading, but I saw the same lies in his eyes as before. I pulled out a folder and showed him the records of his discussions with Kate about deceiving me. I showed him the business plan Tom found, and his face went pale, like he'd seen a ghost. I told him he was facing a trial and that I'd be a witness. He tried to speak, but his voice broke, and he just lowered his head. When he left, Richard looked at me and said I'd done the right thing. I nodded, feeling the last thread tying me to Michael snap. That same day, I learned Kate had fled Chicago. Her lawyer said she was trying to dodge Jake's lawsuit, but she was already wanted for fraud. Mary sent me screenshots from social media where people were tearing Kate apart. I didn't feel joy, just relief. They both got what they deserved. I moved into a new apartment in downtown Chicago, a high-rise with a view of Lake Michigan. It was small, but mine. No traces of Michael, Kate, or my mom. Sunlight flooded the rooms, reflecting off the hardwood floors, and I felt life returning to me. Emily helped me settle in, bringing a bottle of wine and a bouquet of peonies. We sat on the balcony looking at the city, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. My eyes still burned with tears when I thought of their betrayal, but I knew I was stronger. Michael got 3 years in prison for fraud. Kate was tracked down in Indiana and faced trial. She was sentenced to community service and a fine she'll probably never pay. My mom tried reaching out through mutual friends, but I didn't respond. She chose Kate, and now she has to live with it. Mary sent me photos from the wedding. Among them was one of me, standing with my phone, smiling, while Kate and Michael stared at the screen in horror. I hung it on my wall, a reminder of how I rose from the ashes of their lies. My career took off. I invested the bonus I'd earned into a charity fund for women who've survived betrayal. Emily joked that I was turning pain into light, and I smiled, feeling the warmth of her words. One evening I got an email from Ryan, a colleague of Michael's. He wrote that he admired my strength and wanted to grab coffee. I smiled but didn't reply. Maybe someday, but for now, I was enough. I stood on my balcony watching Chicago's lights twinkle like fallen stars. Somewhere down there, Kate was trying to piece her life back together. Michael was in a cell, and my mom was mourning her shattered world. But I was here, above their lies, their betrayal, their expectations. My chest still ached when I thought of their faces, their words, their lies. But that pain was now part of me, a part that made me stronger. They thought I'd break. They expected tears, screams, pleas for forgiveness. But I built myself a balcony to watch them fall. And with every day, I climbed higher, leaving them behind. I raised my wine glass to the stars, feeling the breeze brush my face, like it was washing away the last traces of their betrayal. To myself, to the truth, to a new dawn. Because the best revenge isn't destroying others. It's building a life they can only dream of. Have you ever been betrayed by someone close to you? Share your story. Let's support each other.